Hi guys, welcome to this episode of Stars and Startups with me, Varun Vomidi. On this episode of Stars and Startups, I speak with Krishi Phagwani, the co-founder and CEO of Hashtag Loyalty, a customer engagement and loyalty marketing tool for brick and mortar businesses in the hospitality and retail segment. Today, Hashtag Loyalty works with 1,500 brands across the country, including brands like Smash, National Ice Cream, the Belgian Waffle Company, Massive Hospitality, and a whole lot more. Krishi also discusses how Hashtag Loyalty came about, how they supported their customers once lockdown was implemented, starting an initiative called Save Local to support the businesses that are being hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, on to the show. It's been a long time since we met at what is that bagel shop on Pali Hill. We kind of bumped into each other. Seems like eons ago, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So
I think it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to kind of finally catch up as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll do a lot more than catching up here. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey, building Hashtag Loyalty, marketing as a service, which is kind of, a lot of people have kind of moved away from doing this. But why don't you give a quick intro to yourself, what you've been doing, and of course to Hashtag Loyalty.
Sure, sounds good. Hashtag Loyalty is basically a retention marketing tool for brick and mortar businesses, predominantly within the hospitality and the retail sectors. To kind of put things into perspective, we help businesses with three core areas. Number one, we help them capture first-party customer data through different mediums. I think the most popular medium is a loyalty program, wherein we get customers to enroll themselves into a loyalty program and use that as a medium to kind of capture their transaction data. The second is a feedback management tool that we utilize to collect more in-store qualitative information about a user's experience. And finally, we have a reservations platform that is kind of utilized predominantly within the food and beverage space to kind of keep track of guests walking in, walking out of their establishment. The idea is that once we help them capture this information, we provide a really cool dashboard that helps them understand and kind of analyze the data better so they can pull out a lot of actionable insights, understand purchase patterns, segment users in different buckets, and kind of just find out how the business is performing in different aspects of things. Finally, we have an engagement module that essentially enables them to leverage this information in a smarter manner and kind of utilize it to engage with the customers through different mediums, either automatically, depending on like a marketing automation or customer lifecycle, or manually through different events or through different announcements that they would want to run.
So the first time I saw Hashtag Loyalty was it was kind of a tablet, and it had like a physical card and just had a QR code on it. How do you get from there to all the five things you talked about?
So to begin with, I think in 2015 when we met, Hashtag Loyalty, as you said, was tablets and cards. It was all about that. The idea there was to start off as a simple loyalty platform where customers could simply pick up a loyalty card, scan it on the tablet, and join a loyalty program. Every time they visited an establishment, they would scan the QR code again, collect their points, and if they were eligible, redeem rewards. Now, that obviously was a very long time back, but it was a very, very important part of our journey because like Varun, there are probably a lot of other people today that still remember the orange cards and kind of talk about it when we meet them. About 1.5 years into our existence, we had scaled to about 100, 120 businesses. But at that point in time, we realized that we couldn't scale further because of limitations with respect to the capital expenses involved in the tablets and cards. While it was great from the perspective that it was completely DIY from a consumer perspective, and staff involvement was minimal, there were a lot of restrictions in terms of access to the information that we had, like your transaction data and stuff like that. At the same time, the operational expenses around got a little too much to handle. Managing broken tablets, managing charging issues, things like that. And I think that's why in mid to end 2017, we decided to kind of pivot and move to a complete asset-light SaaS platform, which was then fully integrated directly into the point of sale. So it became a very, very seamless process for the restaurateurs to kind of use.
So the point of sale was a conduit to this service that you offer?
So the point of sale is basically, so it's one of the necessary bits in terms of infrastructure, right? For almost all businesses. Now, when we started off, I think the point of sale market in India is very, very fragmented, as you probably know. Now, I think in F&B, after 3 years pushing for integrations, we're currently integrated with probably around 12 to 13 of the top vendors.
That must have been hard.
Sorry?
That must have been hard.
Yeah, very hard. And that I think covers around 1.5 to 2 lakh businesses standalone. Now, given that the restrictions that are in place, we at the time of the pivot, we also kind of launched a staff dashboard, which was kind of like a very broken down version of an MPOS. So that if a business wasn't integrated with, if we weren't integrated with their point of sale, they could just use this to kind of record transactions and create redemptions and stuff like that.
So you still have to work with these POS players, and do you immediately get access to the whole clientele, or that is a additional sales process that you follow?
So I think it's different for different point of sales. Out of the 12 that we work with today, I think we closely work with PaidPooja and POSist, wherein there's active lead sharing between the point of sale and us. Some of the older guys might not kind of look to kind of co-sell and stuff like that. So it really depends. Our philosophy has always been is to try and be more collaborative. Yeah. So we try and push a lot of these vendors to kind of work together. In fact, just recently we've joined hands with two different markets. There's one called Garage Plug in the automobile services space, and there's Quick Cleaning in the laundry services space that will be reselling our product.
Got it. So it becomes an additional revenue stream for those businesses as well when you partner with them.
Absolutely.
I think a business like PaidPooja fits squarely in that space, right? Because I think it's almost a free platform, and then they try to make money off these.
So PaidPooja is not actually free. They are one of the cheaper players in this space today. I think their pricing is around 12,000 to 24,000 a year. Not sure the exact number because it keeps changing, but they're not free. I think they did try that approach a couple of years back, but the model changed completely. They are one of the leaders, but PaidPooja tends to work more with your smaller businesses, whereas a brand like a POSist works with more mid-market customers.
Understood. With Udaan probably making an investment in PaidPooja, it's probably going to just result in more clients for you. How did that conversation go?
To be honest, I don't know yet. That's something that we haven't discussed with them at the moment. But I do see a lot of, I see PaidPooja growing very aggressively because I think the Udaan PaidPooja combination becomes really, really solid. The Udaan, if I'm not wrong, has a pretty large base of merchants or businesses that are utilizing the platform. Couple that with PaidPooja and the different services they offer from the point of sale to financing and stuff, I think it's a very interesting proposition. So it should have a ripple effect on our platform as well.
Brilliant. So what I can hear is you work with a lot of offline stores. That's primarily your target segment. Is this by design? Is there a use case for loyalty for online businesses as well? How would you differentiate?
So, to be honest, when we started a couple of years back, at that time, we realized that the entire brick and mortar ecosystem, right? So we started off working primarily with small and medium businesses. Now, at that point in time, most of these small and medium businesses were offline. A lot of them didn't have access to any sort of digital infrastructure. In fact, a lot of them didn't even have a point of sale. So the idea was to first kind of, so the market was huge, and we always knew that over the next few years there would be a big digital wave coming in, and that's why we decided to focus on brick and mortar first, because we felt like we could provide at least these SMBs with access to the kind of technology or a digital product that Fortune 500 companies would have, but a very simple version of it that they could leverage, and they could kind of help take their customer interaction digital. And that's why we focused predominantly offline. Online was a growing market at that time, but online already had a few players, and online was a lot more easier to kind of track things like customers' purchase patterns and stuff, because everything was everything was digitally logged.
Right.
So it gave them a advantage that offline didn't have, and that's why we felt that it was a good time to get in. Having said that, I think today it's more about omni-channel. I think it's very, very important for businesses, not only in F&B, but elsewhere as well, to kind of sell both online and offline. And that's why I think Swiggy and Zomato and these kind of platforms have seen massive, massive growth in the last few years. Do we have potential to work with online businesses? Absolutely. We do work with a few clients of ours that have their own applications, websites, and stuff, where they've integrated the product completely. So we offer more of an omni-channel solution, and the online domain has been very interesting. I think if you look at the SMB ecosystem online, I would probably look at Shopify as an ecosystem. Very, very interesting space. About 1.2 million stores on Shopify. And there are about 15 to 20 products within this domain as well. So it is a big market that we can potentially get to in the future.
What segments have you seen primarily get most value out of a program, right? I mean, I look at you as a SaaS business where you make a little bit of money every month, every year, depending on the packages that you sell. And in a SaaS business, recurring revenue or getting them to buy again would probably be the biggest challenge for renewals. How do you look at this? How does renewals work? How do you show value?
Correct. So for us, the way we kind of classify our customers today are twofold. So number one, we have your slightly more educated customers or your mid-market that essentially wherein the owners are very hands-on, or they have marketing teams, or they work with third-party agencies. Now, a lot of these guys look at our product as a means to market to their customers, as a means to retain their customers and maximize revenue and repeat visits. So these guys understand the importance of marketing technology, of retention marketing, of a loyalty program per se. They understand the importance of engaging the user at a personalized level and what kind of impact that has on their behavior. On the other side, we have customers that probably need to understand or understand how this works. For them, we essentially serve as a platform that helps them increase revenue. And that is the entire sale. So for these guys, it's not about features. It's not about personalization and all of this jargon. It's more around आपने हमको महीने में कितना पैसा दिलवाया है. It's all about revenue. And I think ROI has been like a key parameter to kind of show these businesses month on month. And I think that's why the reporting infrastructure we've created, be it a weekly, monthly report or a report after a campaign, has kind of revolved around ROI, so that they can clearly see how much money they've invested and how much of a return they've got. Now, keeping that aside, I think retention is a big challenge for SaaS businesses. And I think about 18 months back is when we actually set up an account management team. Until then, it was sales doing everything. And since then, retention has improved significantly because we've created a structure internally wherein we are able to track a health score of each business every month. And there are a lot of automated and different interactions, manual interactions that are essentially created based on those health scores that we provide to our customers.
That's interesting. So you're creating health scores for the users that the business, for the users of the business. How does?
That's correct. So we track health scores for the business in itself. What we do also we've also started tracking consumption at a user level. So if we have 5 stakeholders within an organization, we're able to track how each stakeholder is interacting with the product. And what we hope to do in the coming months as well is tailor the engagement or the recommendations that our system is providing to the stakeholder to kind of to basically help them fulfill their needs.
I've seen a lot of these SaaS companies now switch to a success fee model where they're moving to, I earn only when you earn scenario with retailers. Do you see that catching on with SMEs?
No, I don't think so. I think the success fee model is very, very different. And I think subscription for a SaaS business like us in loyalty is here to stay. Where I do see a percentage revenue per se is more on tools around campaigning, around creating and executing campaigns for brands, and wherein they get really specific in the kind of customer sets that they choose, or creating the hyper personalization. So there are different players in this space. For example, there's a company called Directions in there's that kind of works as a consulting organization of sorts, essentially telling the mid-market to enterprise brands, giving them guidance in terms of what campaigns to run, personalizing campaigns. And there's been an influx of companies in this domain as well. So we tend to work in combination with these guys.
So you partner with them to give recommendations, etc., where you provide the back end to do all those analysis.
Absolutely. So our focus again is not, so we focused initially on SMB only. What we've slowly realized is the most value for a product is coming to mid-market. Mid-market, in our case, being 7 to 70 outlets, and then mid-market 270 to about 200. So this is where most value is coming in for our clients. And we tend to focus on this. So anything more than that, we tend to partner with a company like that to kind of get to a deeper level of personalization.
Does the end user ever get to interact with #loyalty as a customer?
Yes and no. So initially we were a B2B2C company, wherein we had an application, we had a consumer website where people could interact, check their point balances and stuff like that. We got rid of the applications about 2.5 years back because we realized that we didn't want to kind of be in that space. Having said that, the website is still accessible to customers. As a customer, you can go online. You can view all the locations that are listed with us. You can view all the incentives that they're offering and stuff like that. Every time you get a message, either through our brand or through #loyalty's sender ID or a client sender ID, one way or the other, you're redirected to the website. So the landing page for that business on our website, where you get to kind of interact with the different things that are happening. So while not directly, indirectly, yes, you are being pushed to kind of engage with #loyalty.
So is that going to look like a long-term play to want to be a B2C again, or that's, I'm sure you have a lot of marquee clients and you're probably getting a lot of premium users, but I'm guessing those users are hands-off, right? Because it belongs to the customers themselves.
You're talking about the user information?
Yeah. Can you do anything fun with them, or it's a no-no?
No. So absolutely. So I think one of the things that we've been pretty clear with since day one is that in the case of SMBs that we work with, most SMBs, we own all the data generated on the platform as an organization. In the case of mid-market and enterprise clients that we work with, the data ownership is co-owned between both parties. Having said that, we do not explicitly, we don't sell the data. We don't share one brand's data with the other. This is part of our contract, and we kind of live by that. What we do is we look at the data internally, and we use that to build better customer profiles, so that the brands that that these customers belong to can market to them in a better manner without actually getting access to other information from their activity at different businesses.
Got it. So you're not the only founder in Hashtag Loyalty, right? There are a couple of others. How do you guys get together? How did it all come together? How did Hashtag Loyalty come up as an idea? Don't tell me it was a drunk night, we're at a bar, and the three of us are chatting.
No, it was actually around the way the idea came up was because I didn't get like a freebie at a place I used to go to frequently. So there was this place called Candies in Bombay. You probably know of it, right? And I've been going to Candies all my life. Karan, who's one of my co-founders, and I actually went to school together. So one of the things we used to do every day, he stays right next door. So one of the things we used to do every day was go to Candies after school and grab like a butter chicken and fried rice or like something else. Point is that during that time, all the staff knew who we were. Every time I walked in, I was always greeted with, "Hi, Krishi, how are you doing?" A lot of times when I walked out, I used to get freebies because they knew the kind of customer I was, right? After school, I moved out. I moved to Bangalore for 2 years and then to the US for another 5, 6. I did drop by from time to time when I was in India. But during those 6 to 7 years, the entire landscape changed. Because when I came back in, say, end of 2013, at that point in time, India went through a big phase of globalization. There were a lot of international brands that kind of came in. Instead of 1,000 customers, brands were now catering to hundreds of thousands of customers. Instead of there being 100 restaurants in Bombay, there are 10,000 restaurants. So the market completely changed. Now, with the market changing, that created a lot of depersonalization in terms of how businesses actually interacted with their customers. So when I walked into Candies, when I was back, even though the staff was the same, no one recognized me. No one told me hi. I walked out with no freebie. To these guys, I was just another face in the crowd. So that's kind of where the idea kind of came about. And we realized that there would be a revolution at some point. We realized that the way I like to think about it, SMBs per se were kind of having their Moneyball moment, wherein in order to kind of survive and thrive in the future, they would have to go digital and have to kind of leverage data. Data would play a big role in how they grew. And that's why we felt that we wanted to get into this space. Loyalty seemed like the easiest way to do it because it essentially made the customers want to give their information themselves so that they could be part of the loyalty program and stuff like that. Now, to put some perspective in terms of how the three of us came together, I think so Dhruv and I worked together at Ernst & Young when I was back in Mumbai, and that's where I met him. I think about 1.5 years into the organization, we got together talking, and we realized that this is something that kind of both of us kind of were really interested in pursuing because we saw a big opportunity here. We also worked a lot with the BFSI sector, so a lot with data and their information. So we were anyways working within the analytics domain. Karan kind of came in later on because we realized that between the two of us, we lacked a lot of skills in the marketing and the creative domain. And I think Karan kind of fit the bill there, and that's how we decided to kind of loop him in as well. And that's kind of how Hashtag Loyalty got started. This was in early 2015.
So you guys have been at it for about 5 years now together.
Yeah, 5 years.
Has it been smooth sailing? I mean, 3 co-founders is hard. I mean, managing personalities and so on. Any learnings from there?
So to be honest, I don't think I would have done this any other way because I've spoken to a lot of say single founders that have kind of started up and stuff like that, and the entire journey is not how glorious people think it is. There are too many ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. And it's always good to kind of have someone else with you through the entire journey because these are the only people that kind of understand how things are. To the world, it may seem that everything is hunky-dory. They might not understand the day-to-day, but I think having both Karan and Dhruv has been a blessing.
A lot of the startups I meet, most of the time say, they don't get much value from an accelerator,
Sure.
and incubators. A lot of the times it's a trade-off, right? What can you do for yourself or rather, what can they do for you that you can't do for yourself? So how do you look at that?
Correct. So I think we've been lucky to be part of 2 programs so far. I think in 2015, 2016 is when we joined Thinkubate's first cohort, Thinkubate Accelerator. That was really interesting for us at that point in time because of 2 reasons. Number one, it gave us some stability in terms of the financial part of things, so that we had access to funds to kind of grow in a certain manner. Number 2, we got a lot of benefits like office space, access to legal counsel, stuff like that, as part of the 12-month program. So expense-wise, funds-wise, it was a big boon for us at that point in time, even though it was a very small amount. I think more importantly, though, Thinkubate opened the doors to us to a larger network or community of people. I think one of my mentors came out of Thinkubate is Souvik Banerjee, who's he's the ex-CTO of Tata Click and currently heading innovation at Tata Industries. So getting to meet him and kind of getting him on board as an advisor was one of the biggest things for us from Thinkubate per se. In recent times, I think a couple of months back is when we actually joined this B2B SaaS accelerator called Upeka. Now, this is a completely different value proposition here. So Upeka's funda is number 1 to create value SaaS startups. Number 2 to kind of the program's primary objective is to help you get from where you are today to $1 million in ARR within 24 months. Really interesting thing about Upeka is been the network that we've gotten access to, because we are part of cohort 6 and there are about 48 companies, including us as of today, that have been kind of a lifeline for us since we joined, and specifically within these times. The biggest advantage has been getting access to the community of founders. The reason why, because I mean, there are only so many B2B SaaS companies in India. There's only one way of selling, one way of marketing, one way of pricing, one way of doing things. And that has really helped us make a lot of decisions quicker in the last couple of months, and also question different parts of our business, be it the kind of ICP we cater to, or be it how we want to kind of set our growth strategy in place to kind of get to that $1 million in ARR as soon as possible. So it's made us question everything and help us organize every bit of the way we kind of run our organization.
So when you say you want to get to 100 million ARR, that means you're going to look at global expansion, growing beyond India, getting in more value, right? How are you thinking about that?
So that's actually, I'll correct you, it's actually $1 million in ARR, not 100. So that the first step is to get to 1 million. The second step is from 1 million to 10, and then to 10 to 100. Now, to get to 1 million, the way we look at things, as of today, we price our product at about $20 a month per outlet. That means that we would need about 5,000 outlets per se to get to $1 million in ARR, right? In order to do that,
how far along are you?
So currently we're at about 1,500 outlets.
Okay.
Pan India.
Almost
15
there.
to 1,600. Almost there. We'll get there soon. The last few months were good for us because we're growing at about 8 to 10% month on month, which was pretty good. And we've been signing a lot of big brands. So the outlet count, while we're live at about 1,500, we should get to 2,000 very soon because of the pipeline and the signed contracts we have. Now, obviously, to get to 5,000 though, that's a different ball game, right? And what we slowly realized was, while we want to be in the SMB space, we want to help small businesses, selling to them might gets very challenging because we are following a feet. We typically follow feet on street, and the unit economics of that don't always work out. So what we are going to be doing is we will be pushing out a DIY version of our product. for SMBs. Our focus is mainly going to be on mid-market, which is your 7+ outlets, because that's where we generate a large chunk of our revenue from even today. And yes, we are looking at other markets. We are looking at the US specifically because the ticket size for our product is probably 10 times higher than what it is in India, and the margins are a lot better, right? So that's a market that we're looking at, but we're looking at going there DIY. The good thing for us is through the investor network that we have on board, we have access to a lot of investors that have invested specifically within the hospitality sector in the US. So with restaurants, with QSR chains and stuff like that. So through that, we have access to a large network of restaurants within the New York and DC market, which would probably be a first for us. But that's something we're yet to kind of figure out in terms of next steps.
Understood. That's great, man. So you're saying you use feet on street. Do you build your own kind of teams, or have you outsourced? There seems to be a lot of these sales as a service providers these days. Have you guys tested or experimented with any of those?
So today, I think most of the sales are done by our team itself. So we have a team of 5 salespeople at the moment. I think one big shift for us was moving from a complete outbound approach to a lot of inbound marketing. So I think marketing plays a big role in generating leads for the sales team. And this is helpful because these leads have a particular interest in what we do and are exploring solutions in our domain. So it kind of makes the entire process for the sales, makes the sales team a lot more efficient. I think that's been the biggest advantage or biggest learning for us in the last last 2 years. Now, in terms of third parties, we have tried a few. To be honest, we have tried working with distributors. So far, there hasn't been a lot of success. I just feel that sales as a service works if the product is very, very inexpensive, and if there is not much required of the business owner or the business team to actually utilize on a day-to-day basis. The reason why sales as a service or distribution for us doesn't work is because once a business is kind of hooked on, we need them to essentially start utilizing on a day-to-day to start seeing value, right? And that becomes very, very difficult through these sales as a service operators. What we do, however, is we we've started working with a lot of digital agencies that handle the marketing and social for a lot of restaurateurs. And because these guys are one of the stakeholders, right, for us, we would probably utilize our tool in actually using that for marketing for their particular clientele as well. So we started working with them and we've seen a decent success on that front.
Oh, that's great. But with the current situation we're in, which is where I'm sure in lockdown, I'm in lockdown, I haven't left home in a while. How is your team taking it? Because they probably want to be out there selling, managing, meeting. So have you been speaking to your customers as well, the businesses, restaurants? What has been the sentiment? I mean, it's a very situational question. So I'd love to hear what the market is saying and what you guys are thinking about the current scenario.
So, see, to be honest, the current scenario is unprecedented. It's something that no one in the wildest dreams imagined would happen. In fact, we didn't. Until I think until the 1st of May, we were in a complete growth-driven mindset. We had a clear target for the quarter that we were going to achieve and things like that. And I think by the 15th, we realized that this is how things are going to be. And the mindset shifted from growth to survival. Because what we've seen happen in other countries the last few months and what we expect to happen in India as well is that predominantly the markets that we work within, so the brick and mortar stores, or restaurants, cafes, retail stores, salons, these businesses are going to be impacted the most. Because with the lockdown, obviously, a lot of these businesses aren't even allowed to remain open. And for the mid-market or enterprise, this might be a revenue hit in terms of them not meeting targets and stuff like that. But for small businesses, this might be a matter of survival. A lot of these guys work on a monthly basis. A lot of them need to cover basic costs like rent, staff payments, stuff like that. A few of our clients, in fact, one or two have already gone under because they haven't been able to cope. So it's a very, very tough market. For us, we realized two things. Number one, we need to kind of get ahead of the situation now and kind of start talking to customers from the get-go. So as a measure, around the 14th of March is when we kind of, number one, pushed our entire team to work from home, because we figure that this is what's going to happen. Number two, we sent out a newsletter and spoke to every client of ours, informing them that we'll be pausing their subscriptions from 16th of March onwards until further notice for all non-operational outlets, wherein they weren't actually running their business. So I think that really helped us because that was very good from a sentiment perspective. We understood this is things are going to be difficult for not only us but our clients as well, and tried to get ahead of that situation. So we did get a lot of brownie points for that. In terms of customer conversations, I think in a time like this, as I mentioned, the mindset is from growth to survival, right? So our core objective for this quarter is not to grow at X%, but to ensure zero MRR loss. That means that we don't lose even one outlet on the platform, one way or the other. So what we've kind of done internally is that we tend to have a conversation with every single customer, however small or big they are, at least once in 2 weeks, just to kind of gauge in terms of how they are feeling, where they feel we can kind of help them in the situation, and what their outlook is towards the market. Simultaneously, we did, keeping in mind the situation and where we kind of saw things going, we decided to kind of take some action instead of just sitting and doing nothing. And I mean, it's time like this where the saying goes really well that you need to make lemonade out of lemons, right? And that's something that we did very, very quickly. We launched a platform called Save Local. So Save Local is an initiative by #loyalty to help brick and mortar businesses and small and medium businesses basically kind of generate some sort of cash flow during these difficult times by selling gift cards to their customers.
And people have been buying to their favorite stores. How is that going?
Absolutely. So Save Local has been pretty good. So it was to be honest, it was a decision we took on a Thursday, and it was live on Saturday night at 1 a.m. So within 72 hours, we took this from idea to a production release. I think it's been about 22 days, 25 days since we went live. We currently have about 225 brands on the platform, which in total have more than around 2,000 outlets. The good thing is that we've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of complementary businesses that we might have competed with, kind of come together with us on this. We've got a lot of new partners in place, stronger partners. Guys like I mentioned earlier, Quick Dry Cleaning and Garage Plug kind of came through to start off with as a partner, Save Local, to extend this offering to their clientele as well. At the same time, on a consumer front, we've seen some decent traction. We've sold, in the last 20 days, we've sold about 5.8 lakhs worth of gift cards. It's not much, but it's a good start. As and when the lockdown extends, I think this is something that businesses see as a decent chunk of their revenue coming from. The key so far that we've noticed in terms of businesses that have been selling actively have been the personalization and the kind of communication they've been sending out. I think emotions play a big role here. I think it's very, very important for a business owner to understand the situation he is and kind of show where he is today and what he's going to kind of put out, use these funds for. And for customers, more importantly, to be more empathetic of the current situation and kind of use this as means to support their favorite businesses.
That's awesome. I'm going to leave the link to Save Local along with wherever I post these. links to the podcast. So hopefully we can get some more support to them.
Absolutely.
Did you guys, was this a requirement or request from the restaurants and the businesses, or was it something you guys just, took initiative and started?
No, so to be honest, we've been going back and forth in the gift card space for a very long time. And we've never really dived into it because the gift card culture is not there in India.
Mm-hmm.
In other markets, more mature markets like the US and stuff, gift cards form a decent, like a pretty big chunk of like a restaurant's revenue and stuff like that, right?
Right.
Specifically with the larger chains. This kind of came up during a brainstorming session within the team. So we started doing a lot of sessions with the team as a whole, wherein we look at we do different activities from vice crowds to sessions wherein we look at the end, so that the now, then what, so 3Ws, so stuff like that. Idea is just to kind of this came out of one of those sessions, and it's an idea that kind of clicked. We quickly validated it with a bunch of customers that we have to see whether they would kind of work with us on this. Within 24 hours, it was taken from an idea to customer validation to documentation, everything in place. Marketing team got started, development got started, and within like 2 days it was out. So it was a very, very quick decision, very quick action.
Continued success on that. In lockdown, have you taken on any new skills? Are you playing the guitar again? What are you up to?
No, so I'm not actually playing the guitar. I think, to be honest, the lockdown has been difficult. It's been difficult because I didn't think I could work from home, and that's why I would spend hours at the bagel shop earlier when I worked in office. I think the biggest challenge working from home is that it's getting difficult to draw a line between the work and your personal life. What I've actually noticed, I've ended up working far more from home than others. So to be honest, I haven't had that much time to kind of pick up new hobbies. But it's been different because we've been finding different ways on how to kind of interact within the team, number one, with our friends. I think that's been kind of a big plus, because after the day kind of ends, just taking a step back, getting on a Zoom call with 5 friends, having a beer. I mean, this is the new normal now, right? So it's been interesting.
Has Mumbai decided beer is an essential, or that hasn't happened?
No, that hasn't happened yet. I think that's. I think the excise body has been kind of petitioning for that. Hopefully, something to start off soon. There have been rumors going on now and then that alcohol shops are open with social distancing and stuff like that, but nothing has really come into effect.
Are you guys? How are you guys looking at the situation? Are you looking to hire, or is that a question you guys going to push out for a little while until you can, at least ensure that it's a going concern?
So to be honest, hiring is come to a pause at the moment. I think like a lot of companies, we've been forced to kind of make multiple expense cuts across the board in terms of things like rent, things like a lot of subscription tools that we utilized, wherein we've kind of switched to products where we've got X number of months of free subscription and stuff like that. At the same time, I think the 3 of us founders have decided not to take a salary for the next quarter because these are difficult times. The team has been very, very supportive, and we've taken a pay cut on that front as well. The idea for us now is to kind of just, number one, do whatever we can to extend our runway and to survive so that we come out of this strong. Number two, we are working on a few things at the moment because we expect this to continue maybe June, July, if not later. Mm-hmm. And for things to actually get normal for the market that we work within, that might take a much longer time. So we are working on new products, maybe a new market as well at the moment. Idea is to kind of get ahead of the situation, make lemonade out of lemons, and kind of ensure that we thrive as a team coming out of this.
Brilliant. Krishi, again, continued success. I've seen you guys do so many amazing things the last 5 years. And yeah, hope to see you again in person after this lockdown.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Stars and Startups with me, Varun Vumidi. Don't forget to share about Save Local if you want to support your neighborhood stores. Check out Save Local on savelocal.in. If you'd like me to speak with any specific founders or there's a founder doing amazing things, do send me a message. You can find me on the Twitter at Varun Vumidi. VARUNVUMMIDI. Don't forget to leave me a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast player and do subscribe if you haven't already done so.